All right. All set up in the truck here?
Yeah.
Watch your head. So what were we talking about?
We were talking about... I could have looked at the video.
All right, stop.
We were talking about how... the prevalent part of what I learned about being a man watching 300 kept coming back to the point of responsibility that Leonidas had, that this king has, that this husband has, this father has, and what he was willing to die for, what he was willing to live for, what are you willing to live with in terms of the kind of decisions you're making.
Yep.
And, we talked about how when he had gotten told by the ugly dudes, the
priests or whatever,
with the oracle, that, no, you're not going to march. So he was prevented from, or banned from taking his army out. And he went to his wife, right?
Yeah.
And then it was the same thing when the messenger was there, and he looks to his wife.
Yeah.
And it's just like the look for me, knowing how much Katrina and I have each other's backs.
Yeah, we know what that look means.
Yeah, you're not looking at can I do this? It's not a permission. It's like, you got my back. Yeah,
it's like, get ready. Shit's about to hit the fan.
He's like, I'm going to do this. And she's like, yeah, you're going to do this. And this is Sparta! And so that, but it was the point of the unity, the trust that they had for each other, the level of support that they had for each other, that, you need that. Even King Leonidas had a moment of doubt where he had that woman holding him up and doing so in a way that the feminine can, that, the rest of the men, nobody else could do.
His buddies wouldn't have been able to do that specific thing for him, right? There are other things that women can do for you that men can't do for you. But, no, that point of unity and support is so paramount to everything, right? You can't do it by yourself. And that community, that support, it starts with a partner in agreement, right? Standing for principle, moving through the same process that we're going through, but on that feminine side. And there's nothing quite like it. There's nothing quite like it. Another point within there too that I wanted to bring up is the emotion point, because you said when he was talking to the priests or whatever, he got pissed off, I think was how you put it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this emotional reaction, but he still did what needed to be done. We had talked about that before. And I wanted to touch on the emotion point because I know, I said this when we were doing our call, but that's one of the most common, I don't know if it's the most common, but it's certainly come up a fair few times of well, you're trying to get rid of emotions, you're just making everybody robots. And it's no, we're not trying to make people robots, and we're not trying to get rid of emotions. Your emotions, my favorite analogy is your emotions are like the dashboard of your car. If all you do is stare at the dashboard the whole time, you're going to crash. You have to be looking out the windscreen, right? You have to be looking forward. You have to maybe check your rear view once in a while. But if you're not ever looking at your dash, then you don't know that your engine is over revving, or you don't know that you're out of gas, or you don't know, there's lots of important information on the dashboard that you need to know, but you're glancing at it, right? And your emotions are the same way. You glance at it. Okay, I'm having a reaction to this. Awesome.
Yeah.
Where's that reaction coming from?
It's information. It's data, right?
Yeah,
it's just data coming at you. So okay, what is this data? What is this information telling me? What
But it's
do I
not.
need to be aware?
It's not in the driver's seat, right? Like, it's not. I mean, these days we've got like self-driving cars and stuff, but a traditional car, you don't want to let it drive itself, or you're going to definitely end up in a ditch or around a pole or whatever. You need to be in charge, right? And
Like the information, the emotion is not like the movement, emotion, energy, and motion. The movement within you that you feel, and like chemical rush or whatever else, it's still a movement. It's telling you something. So if you are paying attention, and that's the principle of self-awareness and self-honesty, where you're actually looking at yourself
Yeah.
and not deluding yourself to saying like, oh, it's nothing. Look at that and then decide how you want to continue creating yourself and perfecting yourself. So this is all just like it was reminding me while I was watching it of seeing what it means to stand by your principles and how I've learned so much about myself through this process of integrating these principles that Destiny and Techno Tutor and Self-Perfected have.
well, and like, I really like that, and I think like to tie it back to the movie. You are going to go through shit.
Mhm.
Like, the Persians are out there, right? And I can't remember the character's name, but the guy who loses his son in battle, I mentioned this on the call too, but he doesn't, like, look over and go, oh yeah, my son died, and keep fighting. He wails, right? He goes, like, deep into this despairing emotion.
Yeah.
And, the shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept.
Yeah.
It's like that moment within the movie. It's like this intense pain that this guy is going through. And I mentioned on the call, like, as a father, even the idea, because like we can imagine anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine what losing one of my kids would be like, and I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, that would be such a rough thing to go through. Like, saying it that way doesn't even do it justice. And going through process, you are going to lose things. You're going to lose parts of yourself, and I put that in air quotes because you don't actually lose yourself, but you lose things that you identify with, right? Whether it be, the drug use. Like, just before we started talking, we were talking about our past and being chronic weed users and like how much we've changed since then. But the concept of changing out of that wasn't, I think, in either of us. I know it wasn't in me, to like come to a point in my life when I wasn't smoking weed. That was so foreign to the way that I was able to think at the time.
No, I thought I was gonna like this is just who I was.
Yeah, smoke till the day I die, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yep. And
like, I love the smell, I love the ritual, I love the effect, I love the blah blah blah.
Oh yeah, all the excuses.
All the
But you didn't see them as excuses. You see it at the time as totally legitimate arguments to justify the behavior,
mm-hmm.
right? Like any addict, right? And it's like, what is addiction? It's loss of mastery, right? You're giving yourself over as a slave to something. And so any addiction, whether it be weed or anything else, porn, it can be really innocuous things too. But those addictions, they reduce our power. And that's not to say that it doesn't hurt to lose those things or to remove yourself from these things that you identify with, right? And some of them are hard, man. Like, weed was actually, as hard as it seemed like it was going to be, in hindsight, stopping smoking weed wasn't that hard, right? Like, it didn't hurt that much. But losing things that you identify yourself with, like, okay, we're sitting in a truck right now, so opening up a little bit, like, being in a truck, being an employee, that is a hard thing to, like, get yourself out of.
Oh, dude,
out of the program.
when I was faced with this, working with this one animation studio, I won't name names.
I know who you're talking about.
I won't have to. Anyways, there was this conflict regarding my contract, what I signed for, what they wanted me to do, and what I wasn't willing to do, and so I quit.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to play the game, I quit, and dude, as soon as I hung up the phone, I fucking ugly cried. I was so fucking scared, and I'm like in just like at my computer desk, I'm freaking out. Katrina's like, but this is what we got to do, and I'm like, I know, I'm so fucking scared because like we're gonna like it's gonna be so hard. We're gonna go back to this paycheck to paycheck experience because now I have to like build back up from the bottom.
Yep.
And but it was at a point where I was already had made the decision. I was like, I can't keep doing the business or self-employed thing. I have to, or sorry, the employed or self-employed thing. Even if you're self-employed, you just own a job. Like you're still stuck.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I have to run a business where there's a system that is doing the thing for me, and like taking on that extra responsibility because like nothing else is going to come in and change that. It's like you had to just like commit all out to it, and
it feels like you're losing a part of yourself, like you're losing a part of your identity, and you're going into this totally unknown,
uncharted
new thing, and like it's genuinely terrifying, but it's because you don't know, right? It's like what you don't know terrifies you. And that's the beauty of the process and TechnoTutor is like you can learn the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the interesting thing that I've experienced with is that was already like almost over 2 years ago, almost around there. It's been a while, but it's been a journey since then.
Mm-hmm.
And that the thing that I have found is that I don't need to know the unknown because now I'm starting to know myself.
That's a fucking powerful point. Yes. So the thought that just comes into my mind is like, how does that tie into, or where does 300, or does 300 show that part of things at all, or is that something that is like the missing ingredient?
Okay, so it's perfect. So you know how when we say like to know something is not the same as like to think something.
Yeah.
So like to know your name versus like having to think about what 37 times 82 is. You know, it's so if you have to like act in such a way as to like sort of thing. Leonidas was somebody who knew himself.
Yeah.
From like the moment that he had to make the decision before he even killed the wolf at the very beginning. Who he was going to be. Yeah,
who he was going to be. That's a really good point. And that was the other part that I talked about in the call was the foreshadowing of that, right? Of not only is he facing this vastly superior opponent, but the foreshadowing of the storytelling was perfectly done too. How he puts himself in a small space where the wolf doesn't have as much power because of the terrain, right? And
yeah, he limits the wolf's ability into the conditions that
suit him.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's something that we can all learn as salespeople and as men in the world. Like, it's the strategic thinking and the knowing himself that you were mentioning that Leonidas has. Not just knowing himself, but also knowing his people, knowing his principles, and knowing what that might require of him or what that will require of him, right? It's like, what are you willing to die for? What are you willing to live for? The answer should be the same. The actions end up playing out in a very similar way, but like...
Well, because like, are you willing to die to stand for life? Because then it's still life.
Right. Yeah. And so like, that initiation into manhood, that it seemed to me, it was implied that like all Spartans go through something similar to that, but somebody on the call was mentioning that like maybe it was just Leonidas because he was going to be king. I'm not totally clear on that, but either way, like the symbology of going through this ritual, this big experience of becoming a man, that's something that we need to create. Maybe not go fight wolves, but something where we need to raise boys into men, right?
I had read this book about initiations and how this used to be a part of the way that we would move through life. Men and women had different cycles of initiation. You know, first when you're young, and then you're growing up, and then you're initiated into manhood or womanhood. And it's like, what is it now? Like to just like turn 18 or 19, depending on which province you're in,
and go get drunk.
You know, you're
legally
or
for
get
the first time.
or what? Get laid? Oh, he's a man now.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, no, he knows nothing about what it takes to be a man.
Yeah,
and so it's we've lost.
Let alone does he know how to be a Zim. I don't know how to do that either. But anyway, joking aside, the transition into manhood is something very.
Sorry. Yeah.
Damn it! It's something very lost in our culture and our society today, and it's something that I see a real need to bring back, right? A real need, not necessarily, like I say, to go like fight a wolf, and it doesn't need to be ritualized in some religious way, but to really make sure that boys becoming men have that knowledge of self that we were talking about with Leonidas, that understanding that no matter what comes, no matter how big that wolf is, no matter how big that army is, no matter how many things they throw at us, I know who I am, what I stand for, and what I will do.
Yeah.
Right? I know what I will die for. I know what I will live for. Yeah. And like outside of our group, I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody that can say that with real conviction.
No, in fact, when I did the last Clubhouse, I asked the question, I asked two questions. One was, if you knew that this reality was just a simulation and nothing truly mattered, would you still care? And then the next question I asked was, if you knew, like both of these questions were imperative on the if you knew without a shadow of a doubt that this reality was the one reality and everything you did mattered, how would you live differently?
That's a really cool juxtaposition. I like that.
Yeah. And the questions I got were really, or the insights I got were really cool. But every single person in that room, the first question was like, well, yeah, I would still care. Because it's what I'm making.
Okay.
It was like it's
it still matters to me kind of thing. Yeah.
But everyone in that room was like, yeah, if I knew that this was a simulation, I would still do my best. I would still try to make this place a better place.
Well, it's kind of a similar question to like, okay, if God is real, if God exists out there somehow, in a kind of Christian or religious sense, does that change what we should do on a day-to-day basis in any way, shape, or form? No. You should still live the best life that you can possibly live and like make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And don't allow the conditions of the world to define your place in it or your experience of it or what you do within it or for it. That's the self-knowledge. That's the self-honesty. And
And that's what creates that perseverance. That like I'm going to stand even in the face of death. I'm going to stand. I'm going to do this even in the face of the gods. Oh, you can't let me. You won't let me take these people. Okay, fine. No, I'm just going for a stroll. He's just my personal bodyguard. You know, no big deal. I'm not going to war. So it's like, no, you know what you got to do amongst no matter what comes your way.
Yeah.
And you stay the course. So
That's awesome.
those are the things that I got a lot out of watching 300 with that question in mind, with that lens. And yeah, stopping it and taking notes. I even put timestamps beside my notes.
Oh yeah,
so I could see, like, I could go back to that scene, and sometimes because I was just like writing shorthand too, so that it was like I'd go back to the scene where I just talk about what's going on and the timestamp, and then I'll see what it's about if I want. Because I'd like to go back over it again and just really dissect it even more now that I've gone through like a comb.
Well, but Justin, now we have a new assignment.
Oh, right, The Matrix, right?
The Matrix is next. Yeah. So stay tuned for more insights from more movies, and like I think this is a pretty cool process that we're all going through. So like I loved hearing everybody's insights on 300 on the call, and I haven't listened to a lot of the videos yet. I've been kind of busy lately, but I'm looking forward to listening to more of them and seeing what everybody else got from it. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what people get from The Matrix. It's one that, like, I mean, we've talked about lots. So, and I could probably write a book on all of the I think it's already been done.
Yeah,
of all the symbology and all the stuff that's in that movie.
Oh my god.
But I'm looking forward to more
several
of them
books
too.
already on it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I'm looking forward to doing more of these, and it is, like you were saying, like looking at media with this lens is a really different experience, and like going into it with the intention of like, what are the programs that they're trying to give me, what do I agree with and what don't I agree with, and what am I going to take out of this within the context of all of that, right? Like, what are the programs, because there are programs within 300 that are not beneficial, right? And we didn't really talk about those in this video, but I'm sure somebody touched on them. So just like super briefly, like it's not all about having a fucking 10-pack. I mean, I obviously don't. It's more about that self-knowledge of what we were talking about with Leonidas, right?
Well, because like I talked about that in the call too, where it's like the whole time it just kind of kept promoting this idea that like the only people who can stand up against something as big as this
are muscle-bound super soldiers.
Like, these mighty specimen that are just like unattainable in terms of like you could never see yourself.
Well, no, a lot of that was enhanced CGI and other visual effects and stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure they just like painted it on, and then like the way the lighting, it was. But so and then there was an article where Jared Butler was saying kind of like he was destroying his body,
killing himself to do it,
just to be to look the part. So
don't do that.
Yeah, just
know yourself like Leonidas does.
Yeah, and then because the more that you get to know yourself, the more you see what is kind of like the impurities in the way that are starting to that are disrupting your resonance.
Well, yeah, the more you know yourself, the more you can recognize your ego.
Yeah.
Right? Because the ego is within the mind, but it's outside the self. So, I don't know, I think that's a pretty good spot to leave off.
Yeah, man.
All right, guys. Self-lead.